December 4th, 2018 at approximately 5:34. I call this meeting to order. Roll call.
Mayor Santiago.
Here.
Commissioner Pepitone.
Here.
Vice Mayor Parent.
Here.
Commissioner Udalvis.
Here.
Commissioner Cooper.
Here.
Let's all stand and salute the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we have a moment of silence for President 41, Bush, who I believe was a great president? Thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any review changes to the agenda?
No, Mayor.
We have public comment on agenda items only. Anyone that has a comment on an agenda item, please step up to the mic, state your name and concerns, and limit your comments to 5 minutes, please. Seeing no one, I close the public comments on agenda items only. We have a couple presentations. Before we go to our big presentation by ShotSpotter, I'm going to call for Don Faraback of the New Jersey Motorsports Park for a little announcement.
Thank you, Mayor. Much appreciated for the time. Got to get to my granddaughter's concert after I listen to your two presentations. Just an update and an invitation. We love working with the Commission. You're a great gang. On Friday, December 14th, will be our 11th annual Coach for Kids event at the park. And, Jimmy, do you need something?
Just make sure we can hear you on that.
Is your
mic.
mic high enough? Yeah.
Is it?
Good enough?
Yes, there
Yes.
we go. Thank
Yep.
you.
Thank
Next
you.
Friday, December 14th, starting at 9 in the morning, we're having our 11th annual Coach for Kids event with our Green Flag Children's Charities. We'll be giving brand new winter clothing to 492 children from 17 school districts. All brand new coats, hats, scarves, mittens, a warm lunch, and a visit with Santa, and a lot of other neat little things. I know, Mayor, you've been there a number of times and played elf, so the purpose for me to be here tonight is to invite the entire commission and staff and anybody else that wants to come out to be elves and walk these children around and put huge smiles on their faces, because these are children that otherwise aren't going to really have much of a Christmas. So that's our invitation, and again, thanks for coming out to the reception the other night, starting off the Coach for Kids for this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. It's always a pleasure, and it's a great event. And the nice thing is that you just meet kids from the entire Cumberland County. There'll be kids from all the school districts, and it's a great morning and afternoon. So it's a great thing that the New Jersey Motorsports Park does, Don. So thank you. Appreciate it.
What was that date again, Mayor?
December 14th. Starts at 9 a.m. Runs through what, 2 p.m.?
That ends at 1.
1.
11 o'clock is crazy time.
11 o'clock.
And there's food there, Commissioner, so if you want to eat,
Oh, don't tell Joe.
There's food.
Yeah, Joe, yeah.
just so you know.
Okay, Joe's got food for you, buddy.
All right, now we have next presentation. I'll turn this over to Commissioner Pepitone. This is your ShotSpotters. Do you want to do the
Well,
introduction,
no,
sir?
I believe before that we're going to have the sword.
Oh, no, we were doing,
We have ShotSpotters first.
I'm sorry. Are we supposed to
Unless you want to switch, it's up to you.
Is it possible, only because I think the length of time shot spotters is going to be quite a bit longer
Oh,
than...
is it then? Okay, I think, did we work on that? Okay, that's fine.
Is it all right?
It's up to
Flip
the
around?
mayor. The mayor's chairing the meeting. That's fine.
Is it okay if we flip them?
Presentation by Synergy. Are you here, Synergy? Oh, absolutely. Steve Durst?
Steve.
All right, come on up to the mic, Steve. It's your time. Right over here. Right over here.
Seated there?
We're going to make you stand for a little bit, Steve.
If you'd rather sit.
No, I'm okay.
I do.
This room has a good feeling to it for me. Very good feeling. Anyhow, thank you very much.
Steve,
for
excuse me. Can you
Right on the
affording us
mic.
the time.
microphone? So that way we can record you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for affording us the time. We'll be brief, because in a sense there isn't much to talk about except as follows. Synergy, our company, my partner Steve Trumbo and myself, was founded about 7 years ago, and we do solar development primarily for schools and municipalities. In any event, we've done 7 projects with an eighth afoot within 15, 20 minutes drive time of right where we are tonight in Cumberland County, Gloucester County, with a lot more in the pipeline. In any event, the big thing here is that you're spending about $600,000 a year on your street lighting. It's a very significant and disproportionate amount of your electric use and bill. So the bottom line is we think that we can save the city between 25 and 40% on its overall electric bill, and particularly that street lighting approach. What we need at this point would be your permission, parenthesis vote, to allow us to we have one bill from each meter that we obtain for 1 month. We would like to get your usage for all of last year, and we can then come back with a formal proposal printed that we'll provide for you and tell you what the net savings will be in a very tight framework. We will not at this time or ever throughout the life of these projects ever need a dime from you. So all the investment is handled by us, legal, architecture, engineering, permitting, everything is on us, and of course construction. So we don't have a lengthy PowerPoint to give you this evening, and probably wouldn't do it anyhow because the deal's really very cut and dry. We will come back to you within 10 to 14 days of when we obtain your bills from ACE, and if you're disposed to go down that route, if you vote to give us the right to contact ACE and get those bills, then we'll have you within 2 weeks when we get those. We'll probably have you a very firm proposal in writing, but it'll be in a range of 25 to 40% over what you're spending now, and that's net. We do all the maintenance forever as well, so there will be, as represented, there'll never be any cost to the city.
Any questions?
ACE is Atlantic City Electric, correct? I said ACE is Atlantic City Electric?
It is indeed.
And what you're looking for is the permission to
Speaking
get
to the mic.
more, what you're looking for is permission to get more of our bills, basically?
What we want to know is your usage. You're going to want to know from us what is the exact price, how much are we saving.
Right.
So we've got to have your usage. We can't get the 1 month that we got and extrapolate from that, the peaks and valleys. So,
If I may,
Hold on. Step up to the mic, please. You have to say your name and introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, I'll take it. Hi, my name's Steve Trumbo, also with Synergy. What we have is a customer authorization form that we would then just list the meters that we would like the usage from. So it's a one-page form that would have a signature of some, whoever would be the authorizing party to gather those bills. It takes usually 3 to 4 days for ACE to get back to us, and then we can put together this proposal that Steve is referring to give you an idea of exactly what we can do.
And as at this point, there's no cost or commitment on our part for you to get the bills and do anything with it?
No cost or commitment, and there'll never be any cost. And the commitment will come about if we give you a proposal and we kick it around and we get it to a happy place that you say, let's do this. Then at that point, once a contract is executed, there's a commitment. It doesn't need to be accompanied by a check ever. But the commitment would only come in then.
But for this stage, you're just gathering information to give us a more accurate reading.
To give us the okay to
Go ahead.
gather information so we can give you a firm
Regina has a
proposal.
question. Regina, go
Is there a
ahead.
proposed site at this point?
I'm sorry?
A
Do you have a
proposed
site?
site?
No.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
We're at basically an embryonic stage of doing research to find out
Exactly.
what's possible there.
The site would be
Exactly.
relative to the amount of electricity that you use, so that's what we're asking to find out.
First of all, I've known Steve for a number of years, and the projects that you've done in the city. Union Lake Crossing comes to mind, the work that was done by you and your business. And, I know that your heart's where it is. I think, we're going to be receptive, at least I'm receptive anytime we can save money. Perks up my ears. see Marcella Shepard back there, our CFO, and I'm sure that Marcy is definitely interested, and the commissioners and the city administrator. Anytime that we think we can save money somehow.
Well, the
I think
ROI
it's
is
the key.
fabulous because you don't have an eye.
Yeah. And
So it's great that way, and
yeah.
it just works out that New Jersey happens to be, for once, aligned with stars in terms of the
Right.
ability to do alternative energy.
You know, so like I said, Steve, I know your reputation, you know, things that you've done, and you know, it was a vision back then, but you know, we have a great shopping center up there.
Maybe
right
you
now.
wouldn't mind speaking to my
Yeah,
kids.
I'm not going to say how far we go back. But yes, I appreciate you coming, and you're again interested in our city.
Thanks very much. It's appreciated. We'll follow through for you.
Thanks, Steve.
I have
Thank
one final, just
ahead.
one final question for our city administrator. Upon signing the customer authorization form for Atlantic City Electric, that would disperse one report for the 2018 year, or would that go back to 2017?
It's usually the previous 12 months.
Okay.
It's a 12-month report,
Yeah,
right?
so if we
it'll be
now
the
it'll be
previous
for
12
December,
months.
December.
And it would be released to this vendor one time upon receipt of that form. It would,
Right, they're just going to run usage reports, and it's the quickest way to gather them. And technically, we have them.
Right.
But it would be a massive amount of scanning and copy, and they'll ask for them in a different format.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So, I have two questions, actually. Okay, now, when we talk about ROI, I love that, the fact that you talked about there's no investment. However, we do know that businesses are put together to make money. So, give me a little bit more about the process on what happens once you get this usage back from us,
How we
and
make
what
money?
happens from there.
Yeah.
Yes.
If when you get home this evening, you take a look at your electric bill, you'll see you've got two elements on it that make up the vast majority, 90-95% of your bill. One is supply, and the other is distribution. And when we do a deal, we eliminate the distribution charge, which is usually about a third of the bill. And in that third, we've got your savings, we've got our profit. And the reason I mentioned, and will now explain why we do strictly municipalities and boards of education, is they don't go out of business. Macy's going to close 100 stores this year. Target's not expanding. So you have this huge shakeup in retail, commercial in the United States and elsewhere due to the internet primarily. But the creditworthiness of municipalities and school boards is rock solid. So that's where we stay.
Is there like a long-term contract that's done from this, or what happens with that?
Absolutely.
Well, again, this is just the beginning and the fact-finding part of the mission. Once we determine what your usage is, we can put together the report that we're referring to. We would come back and say, hey, guys, it looks like we can save you X, and here's what we would propose to do. At that point in time, we would still move on with no commitment from the city. If you said, yeah, that sounds interesting, let's find out if we can do that. Then we have to go to Atlantic City Electric and ask for permission to connect to their grid. It's called an interconnect application. That takes 6 to 8 weeks usually. We have to come out with our electrical engineer, go through the meters that we want to affect, and apply to Atlantic City Electric. Again, it's no commitment on your part. It's strictly like, hey, Ace, if we wanted to do this, would you allow us? That's what we're asking. At that point in time, if they come back and say yes, and you guys say, hey, we like it, we do want to do it, then we would enter into what's called a power purchase agreement, and that would commit you to the project. But up until that point, there's no commitment on your part. Even if Atlantic City Electric approves this, you say, all right, well, thanks. We just wanted to know. When you can decide not to do it. It's all about, how you guys want to move forward. But when we do enter into a power purchase agreement, that is a commitment, because then we go out and engineer the project and start spending serious money.
This is going to be a project, if we move ahead, in the range of, for us, about a $14 or $15 million project. So we're going to be very committed to that which we do. It's some serious money. But everything is paid for by us. As I say, you'll never lay out a dime.
What about from the city? Is there anything else that you need from us, maybe from our engineers or any work that you need from us?
The answer to that will be a qualified yes as we progress. But tonight, now, no, we don't need anything else from you except we need an okay from you, as I paraphrased it, a vote. It says we're going to give Synergy permission to get in touch with ACE to get our full usage so they can come back and give us a firm proposal and really zero in on the economics.
The only other thing we would need is cooperation. We probably need a facilities guy to take us into the master control centers for the buildings that we want and the meters that we want to affect. So we would just need somebody to probably spend, I don't know, a morning or an afternoon with our electrical engineer so that we could gather the information we need to apply for the interconnect application.
Okay.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions?
Thank you.
Not this time.
Fine, Steve.
Vice Mayor?
I'm fine, thank you.
Do we have to put this up to a vote?
No, we just, I think what you're asking, Steve, is just, because we're not going to vote on this, I don't believe. I just sentiment of just go ahead and do what you have to do and get back to us. I think so. Just try to get back to us, we'll try to give you that information, but I think.
So we're giving them permission to do it then?
Yeah,
okay?
there's no
We usually
work
do a
for you
motion.
to do,
No,
you,
right,
the
no.
board to do.
Letter.
We'll do the work.
Give them a
We
letter.
just need your okay, and ACE will need more than conversation from us. They'll need
Want to
a
do it
vote. And,
Why don't we just make a
written
motion? We'll just-
Well, we're going to make a motion.
Go ahead.
That way, then I can authorize a letter if all the commissioners are in.
That's what you
Then we'll
need.
do a letter, and then we'll get that letter to
Right.
you and to Atlantic Electric, and then we go from there.
Yeah,
Okay.
what I would just need
Okay.
is I would get, after you vote on it, I just need to know, I'll list all the meters on the authorization form, and I just need to know who to bring it to have it signed.
All right, I'd like to make a motion for Synergy to have the ability to gain from the city of Millville our electric bills in order to do research to save us money at no cost or commitment from the city at this point.
Second motion.
Any comments?
Authorizing the mayor to sign it?
Yes, and
Mayor
author-
to sign it.
Authorize and sign it.
And subject to our review as well.
Any other comments?
Good.
vote.
Roll call.
Commissioner Pepitone.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Parent.
Yes.
Commissioner Udalowicz.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooper.
Yes.
Mayor Santiago.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
guys.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Steve, you
Nice
have a
job,
card?
guys.
Have a card? You can
Yeah.
give us?
He's carrying the cards.
Give it to the young lady right there.
Just give it to the clerk.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, gentlemen. All right, next presentation, shot spotters. Jack?
Yes. Good afternoon, Mayor. Thank you very much. Commissioners, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
We're going to do a little briefing on the video screen. If everyone wants to turn around or come out and join the audience, wherever you feel comfortable. Most everyone knows me. I've been up here quite a few times, done some community meetings as well. There seems to be a lot of interest in ShotSpotter from the community. So this time around, we wanted to introduce the commissioners and the mayor to Jason Smith, who is standing to my right here. He's our customer success director. He'll talk a little bit more later in the program here as to what his job title entails. But before we get there, I wanted to do some quick background information and give you a sense of where we are today since the last time I was here. We're approaching 100 communities now throughout the nation. We have some Canada business brewing and some other international opportunities that we're looking at. But in the state of New Jersey, we're now at 7 communities that are utilizing ShotSpotter in rather large coverage areas. Soon to be 8 with Pleasantville. Actually, we just received their contract today, so it is 8 now. Asbury Park is very close to signing their purchase documents, as well as Piscataway. But the other customers, as said before, Newark, Patterson, Plainfield, Trenton, Camden, Atlantic City, are all big advocates of ShotSpotter and have been for a while and continue to expand their operations. We're also now looking to protect more campuses around the country. We have about a dozen campus customers now. We just kind of started that about a year ago. We are in talks with Rutgers and Chief Dinan at various locations throughout the state of New Jersey as well. So we're already kind of covering some of their areas with our public safety solutions, like in Camden and so forth, but we're looking to expand that. Here's the folks from Pleasantville, a happy bunch. You've got Mayor Tweedle and the chief, as well as Lucky Dog Custom Apparel CEO Cindy Pitts. This deal just went down recently, where they actually were looking at bringing ShotSpotter to Pleasantville, just couldn't get the money together any other way, so they took it to the voters. And they put a ballot measure together, a referendum on the last ballot, and it was overwhelmingly approved by the voters in the form of a tax increase, a property tax increase, small one for each voter, about 2.5 cents on their property tax, so that could be used for financing 3 years of ShotSpotter services in Pleasantville. And they actually put signs up all over town and did a lot of community events around bringing ShotSpotter to Pleasantville. And the community, overwhelming support. So certainly if you have any questions about that, you can reach out to the Pleasantville leadership team and find out how they did it. So just to kind of give you, again, some quick background, we know this to be true by polling our almost 100 customers, that gun violence really does not equal homicides alone. There's a lot of bullets flying around out there in these communities that I just mentioned. And for every homicide in a ShotSpotter coverage area, there are, on average, about 10 victims with gunshot wounds. And of those 10 victims, there's probably close to 130 shooting incidents. And of those 130 incidents, there's a lot of automatic fire, automatic weapons, about 400 rounds being fired. And we have the data to support this from the customers that we work with. So it's pretty nasty out there, as you probably would guess. And the problem is that only 20% of the time, on average, the police would know about gunfire that's occurring in Millville. I've seen it as low as 10%. And in New York City, where the high density of population, you would think that it would be much higher, maybe 50 or 60% of 911 calls would be coming in for gunfire incidents. Well, it's only at about 25%, even in New York City, which now has about 70 square miles of coverage in all 5 boroughs. Our biggest customer today is still Chicago at 117 square miles of coverage, and they're adding dozens more coverage in 2019. But the reason that I put this up and bring this to your attention again is even when they do call, the data is very late, it's very inaccurate and incomplete. And I'll illustrate that in just a second. Here's an illustration of what I'm talking about. Say this amount of gunfire just occurred in Millville. Nobody's calling 911, or at least 4 out of 5 times they're not calling 911, so the police don't know about it. And when they do get a call from a well-meaning citizen, it's very rare. And the reason for that is there's a number of reasons for it. Some people just don't want to get involved. Some people just think that somebody else is going to call, right? Most people are afraid to call. They don't want to be branded as a snitch. They think it's not their job. Somebody is going to do it down the street. Or worse, there's a lot of apathy to gunfire. It's become normalized in many cities, which is really the saddest aspect of it, in my opinion. But when the well-meaning citizen does call, as you can see where this blue arrow is, from maybe blocks away, which is usually what happens, here's what the response would typically look like. The blue star up in the top left-hand corner would be your police vehicle responding to the incident, basically driving right through the threat zone in many cases, endangering the police officers to get to the 911 caller who just called the communications center, spent 2 to 3 minutes with the call taker to get the 911 dispatch center activated. And once the caller gets the dispatch on its way, the police officer on its way, that officer would typically look like this going through the area, canvassing the area, trying to find some incident, somebody to talk to, maybe spending 5-10 minutes canvassing the area, clear the call, drive right back through the threat zone. Not a real smart use of police resources. ShotSpotter would give you that dot on the map very accurately within about 30 to 45 seconds, not waiting for the dispatch center to be activated. You would be able to respond quickly, accurately, getting guns, getting shell casings, possibly saving a life, and certainly having opportunities that you didn't have before to interview witnesses because you're in the right place at the right time. Just to illustrate this further, here's a number of 911 calls in Oakland, California, which is a long-term ShotSpotter customer, has expanded 4 times, covers a great deal of the city in the valley there. This is about a month's worth of 911 calls last year, and here's the ShotSpotter alerts that come in over top of that. As you can see by the clusters of red dots, there are entire neighborhoods of people that have given up and haven't called in quite a long time. That is a sad state of affairs in Oakland, and it's pretty much mirrored in almost every community that we talk to across the country. So with that said, what's the cost of non-action? As I mentioned before, that persistent gunfire becomes normalized in the community, and that's, again, the worst possible scenario because, as you can see by looking at this young man here, is he too young to be recruited, right, by gangs or groups or crews that would say, look, the police don't care about you, right? We do. We'll put a gun in your hand. You can protect your mother. You can protect your sister. And if they think, right, that the police don't care because they're not showing up 4 out of 5 times every time there's a gunfire incident, the whole community thinks that the police don't care, and we know that's not true. So I'm going to go and introduce ShotSpotter at this point and just kind of give you a quick 2-minute video introducing how it works again, so everybody understands the actual how.
A gun is fired somewhere in your city. So what happens now? In the past, there was a slim chance the shooting would be reported to police at all. Even when it was, it took precious time, and there was often confusion regarding the location of the shooting and other pertinent information. At least, that's how things were. ShotSpotter has changed all that. By utilizing advanced technology honed over 2 decades, we have automated the process. We monitor gunfire activity 24/7. So if a gun is fired in any area within ShotSpotter coverage, the system detects, locates, and immediately alerts police of the gunshot. So how does it work? It starts with acoustic sensors that are placed on buildings or lampposts throughout a neighborhood. If a gun is fired anywhere in the area, multiple sensors detect and timestamp the sound. The precise location of the gunshot is determined based on the amount of time it takes for the sound of the gunshot to travel to each individual sensor, effectively triangulating the sound. The exact location of the detected gunshot is indicated by a dot on a map. Once an alert is generated, it is immediately sent to our IRC, or Incident Review Center, where trained acoustic experts then analyze each incident in mere seconds, determining if the sound is gunfire. ShotSpotter acoustic analysts receive extensive training on reviewing and classifying gunfire by distinguishing gunshots from other impulsive sounds that are not gunshots. In addition, they are trained to append additional contextual information such as multiple shooter alerts or full automatic weapons alerts that can prove to be essential tactical intelligence for law enforcement agencies responding to these crimes. The entire transaction takes place in less than 60 seconds. With the real-time ShotSpotter alerts, police can immediately be dispatched to the scene. Utilizing the gunfire audio clip and tactical information, officers can approach an exact location quickly and safely to engage the shooter, interview witnesses, and collect key evidence at the crime scene. ShotSpotter's Respond app enables patrol officers to receive real-time alerts quickly and effectively in their patrol car, on MDTs, or on the go on their smartphones. The ShotSpotter alert system is used in more than 90 cities and is an invaluable tool to help make communities safer by responding to gunshot incidents faster, making it easy to find evidence and reducing risk for police officers.
So I think it can't be understated enough how important our Incident Review Center is to the process. These folks work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and they're essentially an extension of your PSAT, your 911 center, except they don't have to worry about baseball bat beatings and dogs barking and so forth. All they do is listen and look at gunfire alerts that are coming in from our customer base, and then they publish those incidents that are actually gunfire and dismiss those that aren't. And there's a lot of things going bang or boom out in these neighborhoods. But frankly, without these guys, our machine classification is probably accurate to about 70%. We're well into the high 90s in terms of making sure that the alerts that we publish to the police department is actually gunfire, so that we're not sending out police officers to false alerts. Just something that we are passionate about. And it is a two-step classification process: machine classification and incident review center, where there's actually a human being that listens and looks at the waveforms and does the interpretation and analysis. So with that said, I'd like to now introduce Jason. I bring Jason in because he works with me throughout the Northeast as our customer success director, onboarding all of our new customers and getting them off and running. And I'll let Jason introduce himself.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks, everybody, commissioners, mayor, for having us today. I'll talk a little bit. I'll follow up on what Jack discussed already and talk about customer success and how we use every tool that an agency has to reduce gun violence, because every agency is different. But first, the diversity of the customer success team you see up there. Steve Carter, 37 years with as a captain, Denver PD. We've got two folks from the ATF, which is very important when we start talking about NIBIN. Actually, we had the John Reisenhover, the National NIBIN Coordinator, Jeff McGee, who is now embedded in Chicago because we've got so much going on there, an assistant chief from Miami Gardens. Myself, I was a commander with Milwaukee PD for 25 years, and then I was working under the Wisconsin Department of Justice under the Attorney General as the deputy administrator. And that's important because in that role I had, Wisconsin's got 530 separate police agencies. Sometimes you just need a chief and an officer and you're a police agency. But that diversity of size gave me a lot of experience with different agencies. Very important on the training and analysis end, our sergeant from San Jose has been in law enforcement 29 years, and our analyst, who we can't get enough of her time. In fact, we just hired another one because data is so important in this field, running the whole country. So we've got a great team that is set up to really take the full potential of what the product can give you, looking at your existing strategies and really developing a plan to move forward. As mentioned, my time with Milwaukee PD, Milwaukee bought into ShotSpotter almost a decade ago. And back then it was a whole different model. It was really truly just a dispatch tool. The sound would go off and we would run to the site where it told us to go, and that was it. But over time, this system has changed. The outcomes have changed. And when I was in Milwaukee, I had a huge task. I had one of the most difficult, challenging districts, 112,000 residents in that district, 30 separate neighborhoods. And it was a tale of two cities. I had the yellow tape that was on the 9 o'clock news every night. On the other side, I had the highest tax base, including the Miller Park Stadium, the Brewer Stadium. So how do you police one or the other? Really, we spent most of our time in the area with the yellow tape. So I started to take it one neighborhood at a time. And looking under a burn grant in Washington Park, we developed Washington Park Partners. It was the first pilot site of ShotSpotter. And what it did is, Jack talked about the percentage of calls, 911 calls for service that we get in these areas, we were down to 11%. There was neighborhoods, there was people that had never seen the police before in areas of gunfire. Well, they saw us when we were there for a shooting and we were putting yellow tape up, but we never had a dialogue with them. Washington Park was one of those areas. So moving into Washington Park, we said, what more can we do with this? What more can we do with the tool? And I started to use ShotSpotter almost as a talking point for holding community meetings. And you can see in one of those, everyone looking up at the screen, we would run to a packed house because eventually people started to come out. They understood why officers were in those neighborhoods. Taking it a step further and developing community engagement, we started to, I understood I had to clear a path for economic development. Otherwise, I would police this same neighborhood for the next 10 years and somebody after me for 10 more after that. We had to change what was happening in these neighborhoods. And again, characterized by high unemployment, low education, violent crime, persistent sound of gunfire, and just an underlying fear of being outside on your front porch. So over time, in a lot of work and a lot of effort and a lot of long days and nights, we started to change it. Washington Park has become a model of community development. Yes, sir.
When you said we, are you saying the people from ShotSpotters interacted with the people within the community?
No, the police department used ShotSpotter,
Gotcha.
the capacity that ShotSpotter brought, not just as a dispatch tool, but now putting dots on the map, creating density maps,
Okay.
and also clearing that path, getting the bad guys and the chronic shooters and criminals out of those neighborhoods so that we could move forward as a neighborhood and a community.
Thank you.
So you see some of the development there. We started working with the mayor's office, working with neighborhood services, working with the city attorney and the district attorney's office. We had a whole team that used a collaborative approach to fixing that neighborhood one day at a time. It became a great model that I was able then to move to the near west side, which was the south end of my district, using that same model, now bringing partnership in from corporate partners, Harley-Davidson, Miller Coors, Marquette University, Aurora, Potawatomi, now tackling another issue, which was the highest population density, lowest median rent income in the city, and some of the highest violent crime. We tackled that piece, and it is still booming. The near west side is the front door to the city of Milwaukee and downtown. People would drive 15 minutes out of their way not to take Wisconsin Avenue or Wells Avenue because of the crime and the gunfire. That has changed. Stores are opening up. There's investment from all of these partners and people now moving back in. Housing has been a big piece of that as well. Harley-Davidson was a suitcase campus for all of its employees. No one lived in those neighborhoods. So, again, there's a story much greater than just response to gunfire. With a great strategy and some dedicated folks and a dedicated community, you can really make change. That's my story from Milwaukee, and we're trying to do it, and it is happening in so many other cities. Again, we're not just a sale and gone. Customer onboarding, and part of what my team does with customer success is that we come in, following the kickoff, we are working with all parts of this path, from dispatch, from the initial call, patrol, investigations, your intel and analysis, and very closely now with prosecutors. We just hired a prosecutor out of New Jersey who lives in California, and we are working on improving prosecutions. ShotSpotter is used very often in court as the basis of why we got to a scene and took the action that law enforcement did. There's in-person training, there's online training. We're here through the whole process of Go Live, and there's regular follow-up with the customers after this to influence the best practices that we see throughout the country. Looking at Millville and their law enforcement opportunities, again, improved community interaction because you're responding to all gunfire, not just what 911 gives you. We seek overall reduction in gunfire incidents, which we see, I'll get to in the later in the presentation. Establishing a baseline to identify gunfire patterns, and again, sometimes if somebody makes up their mind, like in a domestic violence incident, that they're going to kill somebody, well, guess what? That's hard to prevent. But if I'm out to get somebody and I'm firing in that neighborhood quite a bit, it's going to draw our attention and law enforcement's attention to that, giving us opportunities to break that cycle of violence, to get in between that, identify people responsible, and prevent the next shooting or homicide. I'll talk about NIBIN. This technology is going to put you right on top of the casings where they lay after the gunfire. We guarantee within a 20-meter hit, and the improvements in our technology of getting from A to B puts cops right there. We are influencing the aggressive collection of casings because it tells a story. NIBIN, the Integrated Ballistic System, is a fingerprint system for guns. It's a national database of projectiles that came out of guns and casings left behind at crime scenes, where now we can go and pick those up and match them to a recovered gun and people that are responsible. And again, that's that last piece. Let's get the at-risk and prolific offenders off the street. Jack talked about our 24/7 center. Again, this is it. One piece we didn't talk about is that we are very aware of environmental factors. We've had a couple of hurricanes and terrible storms that came through. We don't just say, guess what, it's unplugged or it's off. We work very closely with those agencies to restore them and keep them up during those big events. We can escalate any event. Police-related shootings, unfortunately, around the country are on the rise. We are supporting agencies immediately as soon as we're notified. We know gunfire went off. We alert, but they have to tell us, hey, this was a police-related shooting. We have a number of forensic diagrams and notes that we can push out into the field during the investigation to help support anything from verifying witness statements to the position of officers and offenders. This is a quick look. This is one of our customers, a 6-month shots fired and call for service. You look at this agency, and within 6 months, they had almost 250 alerts, only 82 calls for service. What would have been missed had they not had ShotSpotter? Well, it would have been 217 incidents of criminal activity, 8 gun recoveries, 16 arrests, almost 300 casings, 36 NIBIN hits, and over nearly 600 rounds fired. We talked about people, why don't people call 911, or what happens when they do. On an average, they can be off by a block and a half, sometimes over 1,000 feet, and in this case, 2 were over a mile away when we did match up the actual 911 calls to the ShotSpotter alerts that were verified. Looking at regional partnerships, the red dots represent ShotSpotter customers in the state of New Jersey. I've got New York and Wilmington, Delaware also represented on the map. Regional partnerships are expanding throughout the country within law enforcement. New Jersey is a great example. Massachusetts is another one, full of ShotSpotter customers and regional information sharing. It gets better when cops share information. Bad guys don't know jurisdictional boundaries. They travel. You guys are full of freeways and tolls, I've learned, in my rental car. I keep getting tickets in the mail. But when you have transportation highways, guns travel, crime travels, problems travel. So we're starting to see a little bit of a gap. Atlantic City's been a great customer, and they certainly have had their share of violent crime. Millville, you guys are on that path. Again, looking at stronger prosecution and shared law enforcement resources as well, bringing the federal partners in to deal with some of these issues. I will guarantee you there's more federal partners up where all the stars are, because there's more capacity built into that, not just ShotSpotter, but related technologies. Again, we're looking to develop regional best practices. We've got some smart cops working with us, and we've got plenty of people that have had not just ShotSpotter, but so many other tools that they love to share what's working in the next neighborhood. And again, more funding opportunity. When you're partnered with a group and you're looking at federal grants for not just ShotSpotter, but any technology, having more than one of you doing the same thing is a positive way to get your grant. Talked about NIBIN partnerships. Look at that path, and look what's missing down south. We don't have any NIBIN machines down here, which means it's a longer period of time for you to get your casings identified. ShotSpotter is the front door to NIBIN and related technologies to get the casings. Again, we're going to put you right on top of them. Your success rate of picking that one casing up that was fired at 2:30 in the morning when it's dark out is much greater when we can put you on top of the dot. And working with our ATF partners, I guarantee you we can get some NIBIN capacity down in this side of the state. Yes, sir.
It was me.
Oh.
Could you go back one screen? I just want to see something real quick. One more. Gotcha.
And I can get you these afterwards as well. So looking at some of the successes that we have out there, Worcester, Massachusetts, great example of public-private partnership. I think they're close to at least 7 colleges and universities now within their city limits, about 13 hospitals and medical centers in Worcester. What they're doing is they when you have ShotSpotter, you can share the alerts with whoever you want to. Certainly, I would vet whoever that is, but they have done that with their college and hospital partners, now providing that information real time to those partners with a small level of training. One, knowing that people that are shot are going to the hospital, and usually the family crew, if you didn't get pushed out the back door in the turnaround, if those folks stick around to see you through, they have strong knowledge of what just happened, or in some cases involvement. So having the hospitals know what's coming towards them is a great tool. Colleges and universities, again, unfortunately, school shootings around the country have not slowed down. So partnerships with our colleges and universities are very important. Is that my hook sign, or what was that noise? Okay. Worcester's also developed a public... You're thinking, we've got to get one of those now.
That's a good idea.
Worcester's also got a public tip line, which means they are taking their ShotSpotter alerts where they have not identified a suspect, and they're posting them publicly on their Facebook page to say, guess what, folks, we had gunfire here last night. You probably heard it, but do you have any information that could help us lead to identification? Sir?
Are the colleges or hospitals ever financial partners?
Yes. Yes, they are.
Yeah, we just had one recently in Pittsfield, Mass, where we spoke with Berkshire Health Systems. Their executives came to the meetings, and we thought that what was most interest to them would be minimizing the number of indigent people that are coming in with gunshot wounds, right? Because they have to be responsible for their health care all the way through, not just during the time that they treat them. Once they enter the hospital, it's a very expensive proposition down the line. But in fact, their CEO was much more interested, in addition to the bottom line, in protecting the nurses and the doctors on the shifts, because what comes in with a gunshot victim is the gang, the group, the crew. They raise a lot of hell in there, excuse my language, and sometimes they have to shut the hospital down. In addition to that, these people that work in the hospital, like maybe not the doctors and nurses, but some of the lower-level salaried employees, live in these affected neighborhoods and have to travel to and from the hospital, home and back, in dangerous situations. So that he's interested in protecting them where they live, work, and play, and they funded the whole thing for 2 years.
One other question. Can school district money be utilized as a help to fund this?
School district money?
Mm-hmm.
I don't see why not.
Okay.
Especially, and I go back to the Milwaukee story, but creating safe corridors. A lot of the schools that I had in those neighborhoods, Washington Park included, these kids had to go through a gauntlet to get to school. Whether they were walking there or getting driven by a parent, it was a war zone. So we had, again, clearing that path to get from A to B was very important
I'm just
for us.
thinking of a partnership between both entities in looking to get public funding, not public funding from taxpayers, but other public funding, federal money.
Understood. Worcester also used the railroad. There's a lot of rail capacity being developed there, and Worcester said, that's great. We can bring people here, but we got to clear that path. So the rail company has helped them on their path as well.
More and more private-public partnerships popping up throughout the country.
Well, it makes sense. If it's a great program, everyone's going to benefit from it.
Businesses, foundations, bankers, healthcare.
Wilmington, Delaware had the dubious title of Murder Town USA for quite a long time, but we're happy to report that they're moving the needle in the other direction. Now, they've seen a slight reduction in violent crime, which is great, because you don't want to be heading the other direction. What they've used with ShotSpotter and related technology, again, is grants to build on their violent crime reduction related process. I just met with them recently, and their chief is so excited about the opportunity he gets to use ShotSpotter data to look at a week or 2 weeks worth of data and sit down with each one of his area commanders and ask what the story is, because every dot on that map, every casing that's on the ground represents some untold story of conflict that if we don't do some intervention is going to result in a non-fatal shooting or a homicide. Hartford, Connecticut, another great partner. One of the great things that we recognized there was that they had an 80% increase in location and recovery of those casings. And again, it's a key, integral part of getting into that NIBIN system and identifying networks of criminal activity and the people pulling the trigger. We talk about integrated technology. They have, I think, close to 700 cameras. Their video management system is a big piece of their crime prevention strategy. So when we look at prevention and predictive analytic pieces that we do, if I look at gunfire density in any particular area, it can lead to a law enforcement strategy that deals with it. So we can get in front of the crime. I learned this on my own as well, is that when I'm starting to push cops into areas where we hadn't gotten calls before, I saw a corresponding reduction in other crimes, robberies, property crimes, because we had shown back up to places that were forgotten.
Is there a visual component to the devices?
Yeah, Jack, and I don't think we included that slide in here, but through an API, there is a number of pieces that we can connect to with cities that already have their record management systems, their intelligence databases, license plate readers, and specifically with video management systems, we have the ability to turn cameras through this negotiation. Whatever company is running your video management system, they will impulsively turn towards the sound of the gunfire. So ShotSpotter detects the sound, it immediately goes to the cameras, and they will move that direction. Now, sometimes if it's summer, wherever your cameras are, that's going to be full tree of foliage or the back of a building. So one of the things I'm doing in Boston right now, a little more work, but is looking at each part of the city where the cameras are, especially the high crime areas, and at the sound of gunfire, it goes to the intersections so that we can see people coming in and out before or typically after a shooting, or we look back on the tape to see who was going in before. Maybe a third camera is looking, depends on their camera density in these areas, but there's a lot of innovative things that are going around the country on how to use all your technology. And again, in general, looking at some of your partners in New Jersey, Camden, when they first installed, and I think you heard from one of the hospitals there on how they're scooping victims up before the ambulances and getting them to the hospital because they're responding to ShotSpotter. They had nearly a 50% reduction at the first part of their install. Still dealing with a violent crime problem, but they're getting there quicker because of ShotSpotter. Atlantic City in 2016 had a 39% reduction in violent crime. 2017, we've seen a 27% decrease as well in violent crime from Atlantic City. Patterson, 2017, another ShotSpotter customer, they came to a 25-year low in violent crime just last year. And again, it's not all ShotSpotter. We are part of the solution. And again, we deal with a whole range of customers, some that are very developed in their intelligence and response process, others starting from scratch because there's new leadership or there's turnover in the PD or some of these PDs that we lost half their capacity to layoffs and furloughs. Again, we come in with the experience and with the knowledge that their partners are bringing in to give them solutions to tackle this violence. So that's where we're at. There's the sound that you're going to hear during a ShotSpotter respond. This is what it looks like on the phone now. Officers can get it right down to their cell phone. They don't have to wait for a dispatch. Tactically, and again, throughout the country, we're seeing a lot more officer-related shootings, attacks on police officers. Officers can see the Google map before they get to the scene. And especially if it's an officer that's unfamiliar with a particular part of the city, he can take a look at the 360 of what he's getting into, recognize areas that they've had trouble before, and start to make assumptions on what the next steps are going to be when I get there. Another look. Again, that circle is a 25-meter hit where we're saying you're going to find casings, a suspect that's armed, or, unfortunately, a victim. Another view.
When you say 25 meter, convert that to foot, or can you?
82 feet.
Okay, so it's tight.
Again, more examples of what officers can look right at their cell phone. It doesn't have to be a department phone. And you know, there's always an issue. Officers go, "I don't want my phone subpoenaed." I'm like, "Well, what do you have on there?" But we're not seeing officers getting their phones subpoenaed. We can recreate what they've seen, and that's part of our litigation support. Millennials, yep, it'll come over your phone or your watch. Here's an example of some of the data, again, collected. We can look at the last 24 hours. We can look at the last 3 days. And we can look at the last 7 days. So as police leadership, I'm going to be concerned, well, with any density, but certainly any place I have large amount of gunfire like that 18 or any multiples. Again, every casing, every bullet fired tells a story of conflict that we need to find out more. There's our APIs. So these are all the pieces where we're integrating somewhere in the country. Very common, the CAD and GIS systems within an agency, the record management systems. We talked about video and camera systems, LPR. More and more areas are developing real-time crime or real-time event centers to support everything that's going on in the field. Predictive software, we have stepped into that field as well. We can support it already based on what we can provide your analytic capacity, but we also just purchased or acquired a company to support future predictive policing. And then UAVs. There was an article out today. New York just purchased about a dozen or so. I bought those for the state of Wisconsin. I will tell you this, don't fly them over arson scenes that are still going, because UAVs don't like heat, and they're about $5,000 a piece in the fire. So that is the presentation, but we certainly are open to all of your questions.
Commissioners, questions?
Cost.
Cost.
Well, I'm sorry, if you could just talk in the microphone.
Thanks.
To Jason's point earlier, the way we used to deliver our services was a high-tech IT project type delivery where we would sell sensors and sell servers and software licenses and professional services and then back that up with maintenance contracts. And it was expensive, frankly. 2011, 2012, we flipped the script and now only deliver ShotSpotter as a subscription service. So you're not buying any of that equipment. You're only paying for the service on a per square mile basis per year. And we do majority of our contracts are 1 year, right? We do have economies of scale for longer term contracts, but 1 year per square mile per year runs around the same price now as maintenance contracts used to be, with the capital expense completely removed, right? So at our current rate, which has been in place now for about 2 years, we're at $65,000 per square mile per year. And I think the last proposal that we have in front of Millville was for 3 square miles. And we can get you an updated copy of that. So at about $200,000 a year, You can get a great majority of the coverage that you need in Millville in the hot spots that we've already analyzed.
And you said economy for longer years?
Yeah, there's some service initiation fees for the first year only, and they amount to $10,000 per square mile per year, just the first year, and that helps us offset some of the onboarding and installation costs and things of that nature, and they can be waived if we enter into a longer term contract.
And in other communities, you've seen partnerships with other entities that are kicking in for the cost?
Absolutely, yeah, all the time. Look at it as not a blanket but a quilt. And we're seeing great partners in the housing authorities, where they have not only safety and security grants, but also operational funds through CDBG money primarily, which comes into the city, into the mayor's office, as you know, which is very, very flexible.
Would that be federal money?
Those are federal grants that are delivered through HUD, and there's a percentage, I think it's 15% of that money can be used for security projects, of which ShotSpotter is one of. It could be used for fencing and cameras and other things too. So lots of opportunity there. The healthcare, private sector type opportunities absolutely exist. Atlantic Care down in Atlantic County is looking to partner on the out years for Pleasantville and Atlantic City. Atlantic City was, looking at, the community development block grants as well. New Jersey also has communities that have used foundations, like in Newark, New Jersey. And there's other grants out there, too, from DOJ and DHS that we could look at. So we could pull a full funding report for you that would kind of detail everything that's coming out in 2019 from the federal government and make sure that we leave no stone unturned when it comes to applying for those grants.
And that's something that you would provide?
And we'll give you that service at no charge. And that way, as you look to maybe some other local funding sources, we take a look at the federal money as well, because that's a little bit longer term. We get something, it's grant season around January, February, but those drawdown for those grants usually later on in the year, because they don't even award them till late summer.
All right, thank you.
Could you tell me if this is sole source?
Absolutely.
There are other shooting detection systems out there?
Well, there's a difference in the approach. So ShotSpotter is the only company in the world that provides a gunshot detection and location system, where we use multiple sensors to triangulate or multilaterate on the actual incident itself. Okay. What you have in other type of approaches is a counter sniper or military application, where the proximity device, the microphones, they're not sensors, they're essentially microphones that are attached to maybe a camera or something. You have to hear the supersonic snap of the bullet going by the sensor, and it has to have, by the microphone, and it has to have line of sight, where our sensors don't need line of sight to hear, which is why we can get into crevices and around an urban environment like we do, which is highly dense with buildings and foliage. Nobody else does that. So that's a different approach, which is why we've been sole sourced all over New Jersey and 90% of our communities around the country. Usually the only time we're not a sole source is when some local procurement law precludes it. And that happens sometimes, and we'll help the community with the technical specs to get what they need from a gunshot detection and location system. And they'll go out to RFP or a bid.
Have you seen collaborations of counties come together, like through cities?
Absolutely, and we would think that would be a great idea here, with Bridgeton and Vineland and the prosecutor's office getting involved. And we'd be happy to come back and speak with more people from the county if that's a direction that you want to go.
Mr. Pontius, I have a point of clarification. You had said that the initial proposal included 3 square miles.
Yes, ma'am.
In terms of the area of Millville, was that a perimeter that was defined by
we work
ShotSpotter?
we work with the police department to identify known gunfire calls for service, which again is woefully inept compared to what's actually likely to be happening out in Millville, because only 1 out of 5 gunshots gets called in. So they only know about some of their gunfire activity, but it still gives us an area to start to look at, which is going to be what we would call a hot spot.
Right.
So that 3 square mile area we worked with the police department on, and it probably hasn't changed much over the last couple years since we did that proposal. And we can update that for the commission.
Well, the reason I ask is because the Community Development Block Grant does not restrict the city, but it does target the city to a specific area. Therefore, any funding that would be available through CDBG, is that within the administrative cap? Because I know that we have an administrative cap for CDBG. We also have blight and slum elimination. So our targets are very specific as to the percentage of our funding that we can grant out from any given year to the next. And then that funding often fluctuates based on the availability from the federal grant as well as what our use has been in the past, whether or not we've fallen within the guidelines. So I'm just trying to ascertain whether or not this perimeter does in fact fall in our target area, which would be something we
We'd have to look into that. Yeah.
Okay.
But in addition to CDBG, like in what just happened in Pittsburgh, they had a 3 square mile pilot for 2 years, and they just added 15 square miles of coverage in Pittsburgh, basically covering all their police zones, and it was fully funded, well, not fully, 75% funded by the Housing Authority operational budget, not CDBG money. So I think it's 10% of that budget can be potentially utilized for safety and security projects. You know what that is? My
Ashley?
battery.
What type of funding are we talking that CBG grants could provide? Again, I don't know.
The exact figures, I know that when we had received our recent notification of grant, we were looking at over $200,000, but
wow.
everything is apportioned into different
I
areas,
understand that. I just
which
didn't
limits
realize
the expenditures. That also deals with housing rehabilitation, and it's very specific to, even code enforcement falls within that, but it's very specific to the area.
And the portion.
So we're looking at very, specific areas, and they are, whether they're NRTC regions. I mean, our consultant is something that we could definitely rely upon to find out information. The use of funds is always something that we seek consultation in order to make sure that we're in
makes
compliance,
sense.
especially with federal funding.
Exactly, but thank you.
Yeah, and we, back to my earlier point when the first question came up about grants and other federal funding opportunities, we would offer up our consultant in Washington, D.C., Amanda Wood, and she would work for you at no cost to the city and identify opportunities for funding as well as investigate those types of questions that you might have and help with the applications as well.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, I just think first of all, I really like the idea. Okay, I'll put that out right now because I'm a firm believer in anything we can do in public safety. I'm a very pro person. We have 2 police officers setting up here right now, serving the city as commissioners and a mayor. So, what their feelings are. But I just think personally we have to do what we can to provide a service to the community. We do have problems, and just neglecting it, it's not going to go away. I'm very much involved in going after state and federal dollars, very aggressive, in fact, and we'll do our part in revenue and finance and other nonprofit agency that I'm part of to also seek funds. I know the Housing Authority is one of those avenues, by the way, to work with them and to see what we can do. I'm definitely interested in partnership, maybe with the Board of Education, the City of Millville, in some capacity within our schools to see what we have to do to make sure that we protect our children in some fashion, not just because it's in one particular area, but there's no boundaries when it comes to education in schools, their safety. So, I'm looking forward to working with it, with you folks and the mayor and the commissioners and economic development, which is important. So, I'm just more interested in going down the line and see where we are. Can we afford it, or can we afford not to have it? I think that's the question we have to address as commissioners. So, I just want to let you know that I appreciate you guys coming. The 2 J's, I'm going to call you the 2 J's, if that's okay. I'm excited to look forward to it and see if we can do something. And if we can,
See what we can do.
hope we can do it.
Well, we're here at your service. If you have other meetings that you'd like to bring us to, county-wide or with other private sector executives.
Well, Jack, it comes under public safety.
Mhm.
you know, the Commissioner of Public Safety.
Very interested for a while, and again, hearing the presentation brings more clarity, and again, my point is going to be, how do we afford it? I really like the idea. I think it could help. I think it brings around the whole community policing. It ties hand in hand with Neighborhood Watch and everything else, and that may be something that's utilized to bring the city together to say it's our city, let's take it back.
Well, if you look at Camden, they were always in
I
the
have
top
the notes.
3. Yeah, they were always in the top 3 for years, years and years in the most violent cities in the country, and they're not even in the top 40 right now.
And
And
you know-
I can't take credit for that, but we're part of that solution for sure.
You know, one of the points you brought out, Jack, was not just the safety of the public, but the safety of our police officers.
That's a
I think
great
it's
point.
important.
Yep.
They know what they're getting into before they get there.
As well as businesses can flourish in an area where crime drops.
That was completely the strategy in Milwaukee. We had to clear a path before people would be willing to come down Lisbon Avenue, North Avenue,
Right.
to go to a store, and that's what we had to do. And again, it was a partnership. One, getting the bad people out of the houses that were pulling the trigger, and letting neighborhood services come in and knock a few houses down. We actually knocked down 150 one summer. But let's rebuild. Let's get people back to that neighborhood and the right people through Habitat for Humanity and LIST. We started a partnership where the police were vetting residents going into those houses because we wanted good community partners in the area.
Sure.
And I've got great videos from both of those neighborhoods to share with you on where they've come full time.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to the 2 J's for coming out here, and
Oh no! Oh no!
we've coined you now, right? That's your name. But I do want to say thank you, Jack. You know, you and I have emailed, so
Yes.
I know you pretty much know where I stand. I really like what I'm seeing. I just have a few questions more about cost.
Sure.
And a little bit more about scale. And so in terms of scale, I'm thinking about, we talked last year, I saw your presentation last year. I wanted to know if there's anything new that you've added to ShotSpotter that makes it even more effective.
You want to talk about the emissions? Yeah.
So, again, we talked about the acquisition of a predictive analysis company. We bought a company out of Pennsylvania called Punch Lab. A big part of our solution down in Chicago, where we take roughly anywhere from 5 to 10 years worth of historical crime data. We look at, then we go day of the week. We'll start to look at things like weather, day of the week, time of day, and start to build missions into not only ShotSpotter alerts, but some of these other pieces. We also take very important input from the officers in the field. Otherwise, they could reject that product, right? No one's going to make decisions from my squad area. Using that, one of my biggest issues was not that I didn't know where the cops needed to be. It was keeping them there when the yellow tape was up, because we would vacate an area to take care of a problem, not just Saturday nights, every night of the week. So with missions and some of these accountability pieces, we can put cops in an area for 15 minutes, because you know that visible presence for that period of time might prevent a robbery or an auto theft or a burglary. And we use all that data to give commanders and supervision kind of that predictability to say, okay, where do my cops need to be for the next couple of nights or the next week, or how long do we want to plan out? It also gives us reporting on the success of those missions, because cops are required now in the 15 minutes or 20 minutes or half hour or whole shift that they're in that area, report your activity. And we can also issue instructions for what to do when you're in that area. It might be one square block, it might be a few blocks. So that instruction might be business contacts, citizen contacts, FI stops, traffic stops. So they report that activity out, and pretty soon we start to build that database on the success of that application, that particular area. So it's a visual tool, it's mappable. You can run it in a CompStat session, you can run it in a nightly or daily briefing. You can bring it to a community meeting and say, this is what we're doing to prevent crime in your neighborhood. So that piece is still under development, but it will be a part of what ShotSpotter provides.
And the only thing I would add to that is we're really enhancing our web-based platform. Everything's going to the handheld mobile, right from Google Play Store and iPhone Store. Authorized users can download Respond app, and we're continuing to enhance that to include the Google aspect. We even have a navigation tool on there now. for new officers and new precincts and so forth. And now dispatch has a new interface, and we have an investigators portal for the crime analysis folks and the detectives, which is essentially the database of every single alert that came in since we went live on day one. And they can really do a lot with that data in terms of, again, getting out in front of the problem and trying for the police chief to put the right resources in the right place at the right time.
We have a product development team now that, sorry, I've been violating this all night, that goes out on these account reviews that we do to listen to what agencies are saying. How do we change it? One of the pieces we just added and went live was the My Location feature. So you're looking at your phone, you're trying to get towards that 25-meter circle where the casing is, similar to your own cell phone where you can see my location on a walking map. You now see where you're going. So it's 2 in the morning, you're heading in the right direction towards that circle, and you know when you're within it, how do I get to the middle of it? So we're putting cops right on top. And that, again, we looked at Hartford, 80% increase in identification of location recovery of casings. So it's really making a difference.
And we went public last year, so we got plenty of money. We're not going anywhere.
I like that. You went public, huh? What are you trading at now?
SSTI.
And what are your numbers right now? What are you trading at?
I believe it was 40, right around 40. Or no, 35. Where were we?
Okay, just curious. Just curious.
He's buying in tonight. Look for him.
Just curious. I dabble myself. However, all right, so just a couple more questions. What are the numbers like now in Chicago?
Steady. Chicago, again, a lot more work. We can put the pieces in place, but all the different districts don't follow the same plan. They were given, and again, this goes to the leadership of Chicago, they were given, and I think even before the current commissioner was there, they were given the ability to kind of self-manage and go after crime as needed based on the resources they had and the type of violent crime. So they're in each district. So despite the fact that ShotSpotter's in there, we have somewhat of a different plan in all the places. And again, that's why we have placed a customer success director from ATF right in the middle of it. We made him move there. So we're trying to influence consistent application of not only the software but a lot of the strategies in each one of the districts.
Just a little off-color story. Commissioner Johnson, will tell you that in his most violent district, where they really first put ShotSpotter in the Strategic Decisions Support Center, gunfire in a course of time, I don't know the exact time frame, was down like 70%, something like that. And he's more proud, though. That was a great moment for him, but he was more proud of the event that he held in the neighborhood where they have the hamburgers and the hot dogs and all the other stuff that they do. And they had 500 people show up, mostly kids, whereas in prior years, nobody comes.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
Nice.
So this is like, that's what I'm talking about.
And it's a factor back in the neighborhoods that no one was calling the police for.
Just one more question. Did you say that there was no capital investment at this time?
Correct. It's purely a subscription, just like, think of us as like the LexisNexis of gunfire data, right? You pay a fee each year. If you decide that it's not working out for you, then we part ways, which is very rare. Our attrition rate is less than 2%.
Wow, that's great.
And again, we're going to support an agency any way that
Sure, you're investing the money anyway, so you want to make sure that it's going to be a good project, successful.
Anyone
Thank
else?
you. Great questions. Thank you so much.
Thank
for
you
your
for coming.
attention. Thank you, Mayor.
Jack and Jason. Thank you.
The two J's.
Two J's.
How about J squared?
I was thinking that too.
Don't turn this into Jack and Jill, okay?
That's pretty good. All right.
It's for later.
We didn't allow for the questions and answer, but they definitely went over 45 minutes. All right, can we go right into old business, please?
There is no old business, Mayor.
All right. Discussion of commissioners. Commissioner Cooper? reports?
Not at this time, Mayor.
Commissioner Pepitone,
Not now.
Commissioner Udalovis,
I have no report for this work session, Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor Parent, thank you.
Not yet, Mayor. Thank
And
you.
myself, I have nothing. New business, please.
There is no new business, Mayor.
Public comment. We've reached the public comment portion of our meeting. Anyone that would like to address this commission, please go to the podium, state your name, and address your concerns. And please limit your comments to 5 minutes.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you so much for entertaining this presentation tonight and giving it some real thought. Kim Carty, and I'm going to actually address you as a president of the Board of Education and just say to you, we've done a lot within the board this year to really put a focus on safety and security. Creating a board-level committee for safety, security, and school culture. And that committee is led by, chaired by Todd Oliver. I don't think he's here tonight, but I know I can say with the utmost of confidence that that committee would absolutely welcome the opportunity to sit down and talk with you guys, not only about ShotSpotter, about what else can we do together to really address the safety and security aspects of our community. I know Commissioner Cooper and I have talked about, safe routes to schools, and Commissioner Pepitone and I, we've talked about, EMS and medical. So to really just sit down at a table and dig into that, I would welcome it. I know the committee would welcome it, and I appreciate that we're having this conversation in such a intelligent and informed way. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Can I say one thing, Mayor? I just want to say to Kim, when I mentioned the school board, it wasn't necessarily getting funding from the school board. I know you guys.
Too late, Joe. It's out there.
No. What I'm saying is, it's not just the funding. I'm saying as we join together.
I know you saw me snicker a little bit.
I'm sorry.
I know you saw me go. Yeah, okay.
No,
but I know.
But my point is, together as two entities joining together, maybe there's funding out there that we could reach for.
Well, I think just the fact that we
college,
can demonstrate a formal partnership absolutely makes us more competitive. And having
That's
been
my
the
point.
person who wrote Homeland Security grants for both here in Cumberland County and for the United States Virgin Islands for 4 years, I can absolutely attest to partnerships make the difference in putting together a competitive award. The USVI has a brand new Emergency Operations Center, 911 Fusion Center, because we were able to get them $1 million construction grant. So having that experience certainly informs us. So I knew exactly where you were going with that. But it's a great point. It's not always about the dollars. It's about the partnership and being able to demonstrate that we're all in, right? So
that's where more money's
thank
come
you for
from.
the clarification.
Thank you as well.
Anyone else?
Good evening, Commissioners. Angeline Broomhall, Millville. I just thought it was a really great idea that you guys are looking into ways to save money with the electricity. And I just had a suggestion of something you might want to consider. They asked for the bills and wanting to work with somebody like one of our engineers or something to look at our meters. And what I would recommend you do or consider is maybe doing your request for quotes first. That way you can see who's interested in it, and then you can give out all that information at the same time. So like, for example, the bills. So if you have this company, Synergy, getting this bill, and then another company that might be interested in bidding for this, they're getting a different period, say, and then, your utility person's going to have to take half the morning to talk to Synergy and then talk to this company and talk to that company. That's using a lot of our resources. And in the end, it might not be Synergy who we go with. They might not have the best offer, and they might not give the best quote. So maybe just a streamline of saving money to try, to save money instead of spending money to try to save. That's just my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Anyone else? Seeing no one else, I close the public comment portion of the meeting. Comments of commissioners? Commissioner Cooper?
None at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Pepitone?
None at this time.
Commissioner Dalvis?
Not at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor?
No, Mayor, not at this time.
I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
So vote?
All right.
Aye?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
This was a busy meeting. We'll take about 5 minutes. We'll be back.
All right. Guys, somebody.